Well Live Strong quilt. I have got it all around me, all the different quilts. But the part that we're going to work on today, which is in the full-size blocks, is we're going to be working on piecing together all of these different squares around the Strength Quilt Block right here. So let's fold this in half, right, like that, because we're working on this side of the Strength Quilt Block and of the Live Well, Live Strong quilt, and this is the Strength Quilt, which is the largest quilt block in the quilt itself. We have all of these patchwork pieces to put on here and to attach to the Strength Quilt Block. So it goes pretty quickly, but I just want to make sure that you guys can kind of understand what we're doing. So, but as we are piecing this, we're wanting to make sure all of these little 1/4-inch points are being pieced true to form so that we can see them. And also our other blocks right up here along the top and along the sides. We're wanting to make sure all of these 1/4-inch points are matching too. So it's kind of tricky. This is definitely a skill building quilt, and this is the advanced part where you're piecing together quilts. But I think as if you have worked through the pattern, you definitely have the skill set to do this, and it does go together very quickly. So I wanted to show you what we're working on this scale. This is the paper piecing version right here. And so this is the 20 by 20 inch version, but the true version of the original quilt is this size for the Strength Quilt Block. So we have the Strength Quilt Block right here. I have, hi, Deborah, it's so good to see you. I have got the first section A sewn to the bottom of the Strength Quilt Block, so you can see that right here. Right here is section B that we're going to sew to the side of the quilt, and right over here is section C that we're going to sew to the top of the Strength Quilt Block. So we're going to do two runs on here. Please tell me how everything is going for all of you guys. Let me know where you are from. I am in Salt Lake City, Utah. We have got beautiful weather. I watched Ellie yesterday, and we actually went and did a quilt photo shoot with some different quilts at a local farm here in Utah. It was really just such a beautiful day. Hi, Linda. It's so good to see you. I'm sorry you've been busy, but maybe it's been a good busy. So let's go ahead and get started on what we're doing. So remember, one more time, I've shown you these large scale. So this is the Strength Quilt Block right here. It's just kind of nice to see it smaller scale. Strength Quilt Block, I sewed on the bottom row, section A, to it. Now we're going to sew on the section B, and then at the very end we're going to sew on section C. So, and let me know how long you've been quilting. Let me know lots of different things about you guys. It's so wonderful to see everybody. So here we have the Strength Quilt Block right here. And we've got section A sewn to the bottom. So it is now time to match up section B right over here. And we're going to match these up just right like this. So it's kind of big. Let me go ahead and switch to the other camera so you guys can see this from the face down. So what we're going to do is we've got the Strength Quilt Block right here. This is section B. And we're going to match this up to the side of the Strength Quilt Block with section A attached to it. So you can see there's lots of different 1/4-inch seams that I'd like to match. And one thing that you want to do before is you want to look for any vulnerabilities. So right here I've got a pretty good true 1/4-inch seam. This looks like a true 1/4-inch seam. This one is just a little bit slight. I don't know why that happened. I've got a true 1/4-inch seam right here, and this is definitely a good 1/4-inch seam, good 1/4-inch seam. So just go down your row and look at your 1/4-inch seams as you're piecing these blocks together. So I've got a great 1/4-inch seam here, right here. This one is a little funky. You can see the fabric was slightly short. So whenever you're piecing, not everything comes together absolutely perfect. This one I probably should have just given it a little tug right there. I've got a good 1/4-inch seam right here, and I've got a good 1/4-inch seam right here. So you want to look at both sides of your fabric, check your 1/4-inch seams, See if they're true to form or not, because you might pin things just slightly different. I'm going to stick a pin in it right over here on this side, and I think I've got more to match as I go down this side. Let me look at this. Although I really want this strength side to really shine through. I want to really hit these points because they're much bolder points. So I'm going to pin on this side right here because we've got bolder points to match our, you know, these points of the star are quite large. So if we've got one of those off, it's going to be pretty obvious in the final quilt. I mean, you know, not really. We've got lots and hundreds of pieces of fabric in here. So let's go ahead and just match this up. I'm going to match those so that I've got my seams going. I'm nesting that seam in there, and I have my seams going just slightly more. Linda, you've been sewing for more than 55 years, but you've only been quilting the last 3 years. What do you think of sewing versus quilting? What are some differences for you, Linda? I'm really curious about that. So, okay, here we go. So let's go ahead and pull this along. Victor says he started very young. Mom taught us around 8 to 10 years old and learned to quilt with grandmother. How wonderful. You guys, isn't it amazing the memories that we have of quilting? In fact, I've got the sweetest little book I just stumbled on. We've been doing lots of spring cleaning around here. And it was a book that my son had that he was adamant that he wanted. And it was just like a flimsy, I have it right next to me, you guys. I'll have to show it to you. But he wanted this little flimsy Superman book, and I wanted him to buy like a nicer hardback book. I mean, it was so silly. Anyway, so we got home, and of course I bought these other books. But in it had a picture of Superman's mom making him his costume. And when my son saw that picture, he says, "Oh, his mom loves him." So I think it is. It's beautiful, the memories that we have from quilting and making quilts and things. And I think that it does leave memories for our grandchildren and our children. Now, one thing that we've been doing this last week is marking our quilt with the friction pen in any spots where we feel that we might not be able to see it. So let's go ahead and look at that real fast. I wanted to get this a little start on the sewing machine though, to just kind of hold everything in place. But you can see right here, I have got a 1/4 inch seam mark that I'm wanting to absolutely match. So in this instance, I would be making a mark on my blue, navy blue thing. So I'm going to actually use my pencil to help me mark where that 1/4 inch seam is on this other side. And I can just put some little guide marks. Now right here, this is the one that's a little wonky. It's just not quite completely smooth there, which when you piece together quilts, remember it's lots of pieces of fabric. So right here I'm going to use this pen so that I am going to cross, maybe not exactly true to that 1/4 inch, but I want to cross my fabric about right there. So as you are bringing these points across, if you can match where you want that fabric to hit and that seam allowance to hit, it'll help you match those up a little bit better. So I've got another one right here, and that's a good healthy seam allowance. So I'm going to mark where that is. And let's go ahead and piece this and see how we do. Okay, so remember, use the tools that you have available to you to help you get your seams matched up, and use pins. Pin along your way. I definitely will use pins as I'm pinning this many quilt blocks together in a large portion of them. And I'm hitting where my Frixion pen was. And I also don't pin my quilt. I leave my pins hanging out so I don't have to remove my pins as I'm sewing along all of these seams, because there's just so many seams to sew and things to match up. And I would probably pin this a little bit more, but I just want you guys to get a feel for what we're doing and how to do this with your own quilts. So, but the really great news is next week we'll be able to start. I'm also using the needle down position so that when I pause, I'm not shifting my fabric in a long, oh, this says the machine needs to rest for a minute. Okay, Linda, she started making clothes for herself and then dolls and started doing crafts, and she and her husband did craft shows. She's finding quilting a little more difficult because it needs more precision, and she's a bit of a perfectionist. You know, I agree with that. We do tend to do that. And oh, I broke my needle. Look at that. And my machine, it just shut off. It was overloaded. In fact, I just started cleaning my machine this morning because I have not taken my machine in to be serviced at all during COVID, and I actually think I'm going to need to do that. So let me just return. Let's take out all these pins. Let's see how I matched up on these 1/4" seam allowances, because this is live, so it's always a mystery when we are opening things up. Let's see how we did. And of course, we're going to want to press these. So right here, I've got a great match with that 1/4" seam allowance. Over here, I have got a great match right here, and this one is just fine. You can see we've got a perfect match here. We've got a great match right there. I've got a great match with that seam allowance and this one. And right down here, I still have that flying geese looking perfect. Okay, so now let's quickly piece on the top section for the Strength Quilt Block. So the top section is the Heel Quilt Block, the Genuine Quilt Block, Routine Quilt Block, and Content Quilt Block. So aren't those all the things that we'd like to have? And of course, all these quilt blocks and their meanings go towards the, you know, the featured quilt block, which is the Strength Quilt Block. So let's let's go ahead and match these seams again. I'm going to nest my seams. You can press your seams open. You can press your seams any which way. Now right here, I have a vulnerability, and I want to show you some of these things. And I'm not going to, normally I would try to unpick that and make that come forward. But that is something where I've got a vulnerability right there. So, and I think it's good that you see what I do with some of my vulnerabilities. So then we've got this. Let's bring this over. Let's go ahead and match this up, put right sides together, get a good pin, and then let's make sure we've got a good distance here. I think I've got something slightly wonky. Let's look. You know what? This is not pinned. Look, isn't that funny, you guys? I nested that, but that's not matched up. Oh dear. Okay, here we go. Let's pin it right. Okay, so we've got that one. We can't nest seams because it doesn't naturally match that way. This one I think does, where these blocks are coming together. So I will nest a seam there, and then we have that matching just perfectly there. Let's go ahead and bring this back, and we're going to once again just study a little bit of our 1/4" seam allowances and see where we're going to do this. Now, I have pinned on this block, but I am actually going to sew on the side where my Strength Quilt Block is, because I really want to stay true to these points. So let's go ahead and sew here, but let's take a peek. That looks like a good 1/4" to me. See if there's any vulnerabilities here where that looks like a true 1/4" to me. And I'm familiar with sewing with these, but these are things that you could mark. But those look like beautiful 1/4" seams, so I'm going to let those be and not mark this. Just sometimes maybe your 1/4" seam might be, oh, I need to change my needle. I apologize. Let's make sure I've got a screwdriver in here. Oh, well, maybe I will have to come back to you. In fact, I hate to have you guys sit here because I definitely broke the needle. Oh, I have to tell you something. It is such a great tip and trick, and actually I will get this out. So my mother-in-law, Betty, she's 98, and my father-in-law is 101. They live independently, for any of you guys that haven't known this, but I've got to tell you a hack. She called me the other day, and she's so cute, okay? Helen, I'm trying to use a true 1/4" seam, but if I do need to use a scant 1/4", I will, to get something to come together. Okay, so you guys, my mother-in-law, she called me. I was getting ready to come up to visit them to color her hair and stuff. And she called me and she said, Deanna, do you have any, I need a broken sewing machine needle. And I was like, I don't have any broken sewing machine needles. But boy, I've got a lot of sewing machine needles. So I was so curious what she needed. So I brought up this big container of all my, and I wasn't sure if she wanted just like a regular needle or the actual sewing machine needle, but she wanted a broken needle. So I assumed it was sewing machines. I did bring other ones. So I showed her what I had, and I brought these little tweezers where we could break it because I didn't have broken ones on hand. So I get there, and I'm like so curious what she wants. And what she wants is, she said that her mother taught her a tip when she grew up, that you take your broken sewing machine needles and you use them in your wall to hang picture frames because they're a very sturdy needle. And that was a tip that I learned this last week. So I just wanted to share that tip with you because I just thought it was the cutest thing ever. So, okay, what I will do, but yes, Deborah, I will rip things apart and I will match that seam a little bit later. And so I have got to put in a new sewing machine needle in here. I usually use an 80-12 and I am not seeing that kind of needle. So I'm going to save my broken sewing machine needle for Betty. So she went through my sewing machine needle. She was content with some of them and for us to break it. Okay, so here we are with the strength segment that we have sewn here, live TV. So we're putting together the Live Well, Live Strong quilt, piecing this top. This section is the strength section. We have this quilt, this big, it's a 30-inch true size. And then, but we sewed on this section, this section, and this section. So I have to finish sewing this one now that my sewing machine needle broke. So anyways, you guys, we're going to go ahead next week. I need to sew this onto the bottom, so I'll have this whole side of the quilt. Next week, we're going to sew these two, the shine section, this section together, and this section together. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Yes, Dolores, I can't wait to deliver that broken needle. I get my second vaccination today, and then I'll be going up to visit Betty and Britt. She called me last night, and she says, are you still alive? She has a really gruff voice. She says, you need to come back and visit me. So I told her I'm coming up today. So anyways, we'll come up after we get our vaccinations. If you want to, you can pick up the Live Well, Live Strong quilt at stitchesquilting.com. And yes, happy Easter to everybody. I am so excited, and happy spring. I am so excited about the beautiful weather and just being able to go outside and enjoy the world. There's my website there for you. And enjoy the world. And I even have a sewing space that I set up that's for outside, and I can't wait to share that with you later because I'm getting ready to set that up. And we are looking forward to a beautiful weekend outside enjoying our family. So I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you guys back on Monday at noon. I go live at Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at noon Mountain Standard Time. Happy spring, happy Easter, happy everything. Just enjoy life and feel the joy. See you guys a little bit later. Oh, grandkids are always fun.